Hi everyone, welcome back to OC Avery for episode 10 of Breeding British Birds. And that means it's 10 weeks now into the breeding season and it's time to make some changes. Some birds have gone out of breeding condition and they aren't going to breed for us this year, but others are just starting to come into condition and we need to freshen things up, ready for them to go down to nest. So let's get to it. So we're going to start today's episode off with the lesser Redpoll. So it's been a really mixed season so far with them. We've had 4 of the 8 pairs actually be somewhat successful in breeding, whether that be building a nest and laying eggs or fully rearing the chicks and letting them fledge. So it's been really hit and miss. So half of them have worked, half haven't. So we've got a pair here that hatching eggs, a pair there sitting on eggs, a pair here hatching eggs, and a pair here hatching eggs. Now the other 4 pairs have just not worked and we need to spice things up, we need to change stuff. So what I've done is I've had a little bit of a move about with them. Now I haven't changed the pairs because they've been bonded, they've been together a while and they've been feeding each other. But what I've done is I've changed the placement. So there was a pair in the very bottom cage down here that didn't go to nest. I wondered maybe it was too dark or she wasn't a fan of it because it's out in the open as well. So I've moved that pair up to here. So that is now a higher up cage where it might be a little bit brighter and she's got the nest site that's secluded in the corner and I'm hoping that might make a difference. I've got the pair that was in there now. That is a very good pair of birds. They're from the continent and they're very, very good birds. They've done very well at the European shows as well. So I'm really keen to breed off that pair. So what I've done is I've moved them over to a cage over here. And it's not too much different to the one that they were already in. It's 4 feet wide, but it is slightly larger in that it's 18 inches high, not 14, and it's 18 inches deep, not 12. So it's that little bit more space for them that might just spark them on to actually breed for us. They've got a bit more of a secluded nest site over in that far corner with a little bit more cover on it. And also what is nice with this is that the light gets directly onto it, not from the side. I'm just wondering if maybe light intensity has had a slight effect on that, so they can see the light out the windows. That will come into here and there's the light from the LEDs that will shine there as well. And it's these little things that might make a big difference. And with 6 weeks of the breeding season being left, we ideally want to at least get a round out of them or some signs that they might breed for us. From this cage, we've moved the pair of native goldfinches into one of the outdoor flights. And this is the end flight where we originally had the Greenfinch crossbill hybrid pair. Sadly, that pair have done nothing for about 5 or 6 weeks now. They had 2 rounds of clear eggs and I can just tell the hen isn't interested in going to nest anymore. So we've called it quits with that pair for this season and moved the goldies in there. Now, my only concern with the goldies is that the hen, since moving them outside, has started to wag her tail and sing like a cockbird. If we do have 2 male native goldies, not a pair, that's not ideal if we want to breed goldfinches, but it is ideal if we want to do some mules or some hybrids or something with the goldies, but we're going to have to see what happens with them. Up until now, we've had a very poor breeding season with the twites. We've had loads of clear eggs, we've had 10 clear eggs off the pair, and it's just been far from how it should have been. So it led me to believe that there was perhaps a problem with the cockbird, as the hen was clearly successfully going to nest and laying eggs and sitting on them. So I caught the cockbird up and vent sexed him. I wasn't convinced. It could either have been a hen or it was a cockbird that wasn't in breeding condition. So what I've done is I've plucked some feathers and sent them off for DNA testing to Avigenics. I've just had my results back after a week and it turns out I was right, it's actually a twite cockbird, which means that we've got a pair that are firing blanks. He's not working clearly. So we've had to make a few changes. The first thing is we need to increase his fitness because clearly that may have been a problem. So I've removed the divider from this cage to give them the whole 6-foot flight cage to fly about in and breed in. The second thing I've done, and this is something I advise you not to do unless it's basically a last resort at the last chance of breeding the birds for that season, is I've introduced another twite, but this time another twite cockbird. So we're running a trio with 2 cocks and 1 hen. The idea being is that we need to get some full eggs now if the hen's to breed anything for us this season. So we've introduced a cockbird that may fill the eggs himself rather than the original cockbird, but he will hopefully also stimulate the other cockbird, the original one, to protect his hen and actually start mating correctly and producing testosterone because there's competition in there. So I'm really hopeful that this third round, and probably the last round for them, will get some full eggs and we might have some success. By giving the twites this extra space, it means that the bullfinches have had to move. Since the first week of the breeding season, the bullfinches have been nothing but trouble. We've seen them build us nests, we've seen them lay one egg, and then we've seen them lay two eggs. But they've laid those eggs off the perch, they've smashed them, and some of them they've actually laid normally. Or they've laid eggs and built a nest on top of them. It's been a disaster. However, since moving them from one of the aluminium flight cages into this breeding cage, it's worked. And we're actually kind of breeding bullfinches. And I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but from being a complete disaster, within 3 days, the hen has built a nest and laid 2 eggs on 2 consecutive days, the second being laid today. And she's been sat on them as well, which is shocking. So I'm not going to hold my breath, like I said, because it could all go wrong very quickly with them. But she actually seems to be interested in breeding for us. So please keep your fingers crossed. I'm really hopeful that we might actually get something out of them by downgrading their accommodation, treating them like a canary, and it might just work for us. So that's an update on all the different housing changes we've given to a number of the birds. So let's see how the breeding season is now developing. We've had a super busy week with the canaries. We've had 27 individual canary chicks hatch across various different nests within about 3 days of each other. So trying to monitor all of those, make sure everyone's being fed and we're not losing any chicks has been quite a job, to be honest. But it's of loads of different breeds and they're all just doing superb. We've got some frilled canaries being reared and fed right now in front of me. They're a week old, 4 frilled canary chicks and a greenfinch in there. They're doing a great job once again. Those chicks never have empty crops, so they're doing a brilliant job looking after those. We've got a Rasa canary hen. For the first time here in my experience is rearing 6 chicks. I've never had a canary rear more than 5 before for me. She's got 5 of her own and a new colour. The new colour was actually just an egg laid on the floor. I popped under her and it turned out to be full and has hatched for us. We've got an Irish canary hen. She's 4 years old. She didn't lay us any eggs this year, but what she's done is built a nest. So I put some pot eggs under her and she's been sat those eggs. So I put some spare Rasa canary eggs under her. Those have just hatched and they're about 3 days old and they're doing a great job of looking after those 3. The parents of those Rasa canary eggs are actually rearing us a young Redpoll and a young linnet mule at the moment, which have just jumped the nest and they're looking superb. But more on those next week's episode. We've got some feeder canaries, 2 nests of feeders, a nest of 4 very dark chicks. 2 of those are crested, 2 aren't, and it's interesting to see the comparisons of those. And we've got a nest of 4 canary chicks and a young greenfinch in with another pair of feeders as well, which are doing a great job. Now, here's a bit of a special story for you. Well, you might remember last week we saw that we had a frilled canary hen die on the nest on 4 or 5 eggs, and those eggs went cold for, I believe, 4, possibly 5 hours. Well, 4 of those eggs were full, and I put them under a new colour canary that was just sat some pot eggs because her eggs were clear. Well, exciting news, 4 of those eggs, the 4 that were full, have hatched. So we've got 4 chicks that, granted, they hatched on 16 days. It clearly those amount of time where they didn't sit those eggs and they went cold basically cost them another day or 2. But they hatched at 16 days and they're now 3 days old, those frilled canary chicks. They look great and the new colours are doing a brilliant job at rearing them. So really good news is that we've managed to save those chicks as well. Great news from the greenfinches this week. We've had a relatively good amount of success, especially compared to what we've had already this breeding season. So the pair in flight 5, we saw that their 3 chicks had jumped the nest. They're doing great. They're starting to pick up a bit of food, but it's going to be another week or 2 before we wean them off. And I have a special procedure I do when I wean greenies off that I'll tell you about when we do wean them off. But the mum has now laid 5 eggs. The pair have laid 5 eggs and they're back on 5 eggs now, sat in the same nest site at the front here. The second most exciting news, or probably the most exciting from this week, is the pair in flight 4. Now this is what I would say is one of my top 2 pairs of greenies. I have 2 pairs that I would say are on the same level. This is one of my better pairs. Now we know that this pair had 5 eggs. They were all full. Well, it turns out 3 of them were full, 2 of them weren't. But they've now got 3 chicks in there that are 2 or 3 days old. They're rearing them really well. So that's 3 more chicks from a different pair from one of my better pairs. So I'm really hopeful that those chicks make it, the parents do a good job, and we'll get some young greenies off these guys to molt out, and hopefully, everything going well, we can show them. For the other 2 pairs further along, well, this pair in flight 2 have gone back to nest at the front here. They've laid the 2nd egg today, so I'm hopeful. We've not had any full eggs off these guys, either of these pairs this season. By putting the feeding troughs on the floor, I'm hoping that will have got the cockbirds fitter and we might get some full eggs from them. But there's 2 eggs in this nest site at the front here, and for the other pair, they're building a nest at the back, but no eggs yet. For the 2 pairs of greenies in the bird room, we've got this pair in a breeding cage. They had 4 eggs, 2 of them were full, and they hatched at the weekend. However, she reared them to 3 days again, like she did with the last one, and then left the nest and let them go cold. Now, thankfully, I warmed them up in my hands, brought them back around, and we've since split those 2 chicks up into 2 different nests. One of them's under the frill canaries, one of them's under the feeders. They're being reared equally as well, and they're looking really good. So hopefully that's 2 more from that pair that will make it to being able to be weaned and jump in the nest. And for the pair that are in the flight cages, the aluminium flight cages, their chicks are now about 10 to 12 days old. They're begging the mum and dad for loads of food, so I'm having to give them even more egg food, more peas, and a little bit of mealworms and maggots as well. And they're doing really well with them, so I anticipate that they will be jumping within the next few days, but they're looking really good. And that's a pair that I've not bred off before, 2 different lines that I've not yet had in the bird room combining there. So I'm hopeful that they'll make some nice chicks for us. And the final pair of birds that we're going to be looking at today are the Bramble finches. Now, the Bramblings we saw at the start of June were beginning to show interest in going to nest. Now, the hen over the past week has really picked up that interest. She started building the nest. Now, you might be able to see on the camera, maybe if not, but she's starting to build the nest. She's actually on the nest right now in the centre. She's also been building the nest at the back, so I think she's a little bit undecided, but her favourite one seems to be this one. Now, they've been getting on well, the male's been feeding her, I've seen them mating, and she's been pretty independent in trying to build the nest, however. Now, because the nest sites are inside the flight on the other side, whether it be there or across, I need to make sure the hen's used to me and will let me at least monitor the nest, whether it be checking for eggs, checking the eggs are full, checking the chicks and ringing the chicks. That's 4 main steps, and that's if we get that far. Hopefully we will. So I've been offering her just a few little pinkies every day through the mesh from my hands, meaning she's just a little bit more used to me, comfortable with my hands, knowing it means food, rather than getting terrified and going crazy and then possibly abandoning the chicks in the nest if I was to check them. So fingers crossed everything goes all right, and hopefully I'll have an exciting update for you next episode. So that's it for episode 10 of Breeding British Birds. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have, please make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss any more future content, both Saturday morning videos and Tuesday evening videos twice a week on the OC Avery YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it today, do smash a like on it as well. That would be very much appreciated. And make sure to follow us on social media, Instagram and Facebook, for daily updates and behind the scenes footage of all of the birds. Now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.